old-fashioned guy, but I thought families need to protect their child. And now we got, in the 20th century, 21st century, ministers for child protection. Is it a bit an overdue, or why do society need ministers for child protection?
It's a good question, and I wish that it wasn't so. You're quite right. The best, the safest, the healthiest place for a child to grow and to be nurtured and to learn is within a family, and a happy and a safe and a healthy family. That's absolutely the best place for a child to be. Unfortunately, it has always been the case that there are flawed human beings, and increasingly these days we're seeing a combination of family and domestic violence, mental health and drug and alcohol issues, which mean families, not all families, are safe and healthy places for children to be. In fact, some of them are quite dangerous places for children to be. That's why we need departments for child protection, and that's why we need ministers for child protection. It's really tough work for child protection caseworkers. They deal with issues, Tibor, every day that you and I wouldn't even like to think about, never mind have to make judgment decisions about whether that child stays in that family or not. Unfortunately, as I said, with drugs and alcohol and mental health and family and domestic violence, increasingly numbers of children are coming into the care of the state.
So what do you think yourself, or as shadow minister, what went wrong in society? So how do we got this whole thing disintegrated and got to that stage where we are now?
Yeah, I think it has always been the case. I mean, if you look back in our history, there have always been children who were not cared for by their families, but increasingly these days it is about drugs and alcohol, it is about mental health, and it is about family and domestic violence. Those are the key drivers for making families dysfunctional. And when that happens, or when the signs start to show, the safest thing for the child sometimes is to remove the child from the family. It's far better if services can work with the family to fix the problem. Children who've been the victim of child abuse will say to you, they still love mummy and daddy. They want the bad things to stop
and
stay with their family. That's what they want. Fix the bad things and stay with the family.
Are we able to fix the bad things?
In many cases, yes.
So proportion-wise, if you are analysing it, first of all, where are we in WA on the list of the nation with the problem? So how big is the problem in here, or bigger or the same as elsewhere?
Sure. There are now more than 3,000 children in WA in the care of the state. There would be many more who are still in the care of their families, but who are receiving support services to make sure that their families can be healthy and safe. Some elements in WA where the stats are not so good. For example, particularly in some of remote communities where there are significant alcohol issues, WA has not got some good stats on those around the nation. But generally, across Australia, the figures are about the same. 3,000 children, more than 3,000 now, are in the care of the state. That's not a good figure, but on the other hand, it means that something has gone terribly wrong in that family, and a judgment has been made that it's better for the child, and that's the prime objective always, what is in the best interest of the child, that child be removed from the family. Now, to do that work, you need resources, and you need to be absolutely vigilant in making sure that the agencies that do that work, whether it's the Department for Child Protection or the many non-government organisations that do that work, that they have the resources that they need to do that work properly.
And have they got the resources, or how do you see it? Is it under-resourced or just about floating, or?
We know in Western Australia in the last 2 budgets under the Barnett government, for the first time in many, many years, there have been no additional child protection caseworker positions funded within the Department of Child Protection. I am concerned about that because I do think that with child protection you can't afford to take your eye off the ball. You can't afford to under-resource, because when you do, bad things happen. really bad things happen. And so resourcing adequately is absolutely essential to child protection, and I am disappointed that the Barnett government has not increased the number of child protection caseworkers in the last two budgets.
How many more we do need?
We did some calculations earlier this year, and by the estimations that were based on the budget figures, it looked like they were over 50 short. But we wouldn't know those final figures until and unless we get into government and can actually see the books.
How education is going into to reform that system?
In the same way that it takes a village, according to some people, to raise a child, so it is the case that it's not just one agency that can accept final and full responsibility for keeping children safe. Children attend school, children attend the health system, whether it's through a GP or a child health clinic or Princess Margaret Hospital. We need all agencies to be working together to protect children. Police are part of that as well. So everybody needs to be working together. Schools need to be working closely with child protection. Child protection needs to be working closely with schools to make sure that we pick up signs of when something is going wrong and to protect children if it has gone wrong.
So where are the sources of the signs? So what's the most common you got the problem signaled to the system?
The professionals will tell you that it can be, it's on a kind of spectrum, I guess, of behaviours. It can be that a child withdraws, and that's a sign. It can be that a child does the opposite and starts to act out, and that can be a sign. And of course, normal, happy, healthy children from time to time do both.
They're changing.
That's right, they're
regardless.
changing and they're growing, and that's why child protection is such tough work, because judgment calls have to be made. You have to look at not just the way the child is acting at one particular time, but look at a range of factors and have relationships with the family so that you know when things change.
And the families are signaling as well, so in extreme cases, I think, you got too late signals or just about on the borderline signals. So who's take those ones? Or
Yeah, so a lot of work needs to be done in early childhood, and in fact with mums in particular, before babies are even born, so that the professionals that those mums deal with can pick up the early signs. We know that early intervention is absolutely critical. We know that working with children in their early childhood years is absolutely critical to pick up those signs. For many families, the first point of contact with the system, if you like, if I can call it that, is the child health nurse in the immediate weeks after they've had a baby. And important signs can be picked up then, because the child health nurse will visit mum at home and can see, is everything looking okay here? And again, judgment calls have to be made, because coming home with your first baby is a scary thing.
Can be.
And so judgment calls have to be made, but that's often, very often, the first point of call.
Now you're talking about early childhood. You are Shadow Minister for Early Childhood as well.
I am.
How the education of early childhood affects the life of the kids until they're going to high school or even after?
It is the most critical time. All of the research shows, and my colleague Linda Savage has done a lot of work for WA Labor in this area, all of the research shows that the rapid rate of brain development of early childhood means that if you can invest really strong, healthy education at in those early years, you will set that child up either for success or for failure. So failure to put those resources in to a child's life at that early stage will lower the child's ability to cope with change, will lower the child's education outcomes, increase the likelihood of all sorts of negative things happening to them later. But on the positive, investment in early childhood, making sure that children have happy, healthy places to learn and to grow, has a massive impact in ensuring that they have a much better progress through school, much better educational outcomes, much better health outcomes, and very significantly, much better mental health outcomes as well.
So how's the Perth Metro's childcare system measures up?
We've got serious gaps in the number of child health nurses, serious gaps in the amount of programs available for early childhood, and we need to do a lot more in that space.
Finally, we come into communities. You are Shadow Minister for Communities. How do you see the Perth communities, and what's your view what the communities need?
Sure. Well, Perth communities are growing, and with that growth comes a need for people to feel better connected with each other. I think that there is a lot more work that can be done on ensuring that communities stay connected with each other, that we have services where people live, for example, whether that's an early childhood service or something else. We need to do a lot more work in that area. Communities the actual portfolio can be as big as small as you want it to be. It's an area about, I guess, figuring out how is it that we want to live in our suburbs and our towns, and doing that better, giving people the opportunity to connect with each other. So doing things in the planning, for example, when we're building a new estate, making sure that there are bus stops and public transport available, making sure that schools are connected and shops are connected, and that there are movie cinemas so that teenagers can go to the movies and have something to do. All of those things about making our communities stronger and better, we need to do more about.
So, my last question to you today is that how do you see your chances to win your seat? Winning back.
I'm in the upper house, and the way that our system works is that people will vote, I guess, according to a ticket generally. So I'm relatively confident that I will be re-elected, but I want to be part of a McGowan Labor government. That's a harder ask because we're asking people to throw out a first-term government. But I think most West Australians think this government's got its priorities wrong, and I think they're open to listening to what we've got to say.
Thanks, Sue. We
Thank
will
you.
see later what's happening with the election. And thank you for watching Shadowboxing, and please come back next week, same time, same channel.